Dark Souls 3, the game that is home to debatably the best lineup of bosses ever. I've been on a journey of ranking all the bosses in the Soulsborne series, and Dark Souls 3 was really calling to me for the next option. With there being so many great bosses here, this one took a while because I love to show my appreciation for these encounters, so I talk a lot. But let's get right into the criteria for my rankings. As always, the most important aspect to me is the overall enjoyment that I get out of the boss. Of course, I will also be considering things like movesets, flow, mechanics, OSTs, arena design, as well as the visual design of the boss itself. I personally believe that gimmick bosses are usually only fun if done right, and I absolutely love a fast-paced back and forth duel. Oh, and of course, all of this is completely objective and the only correct boss ranking of Dark Souls 3. I'm kidding. You are going to disagree with me at some points because I believe that the last 13 bosses of this list are amazing, and I see an argument to be made for all of them to be in someone's top 5 for Dark Souls 3. This is going to be a long one, so grab a snack because we got 25 bosses to go through. With all that, let me know your top 3 bosses below and let's get right into the ranking. Starting this list off at number 25 is the Ancient Wyvern. I'm going to keep this quick because the Wyvern barely counts as an actual boss fight. Instead of this regular boss encounter, you sprint your way through Archdragon Peak, climb some scaffolding, and land a single plunge attack that just deletes the health bar. That's it. Sure, FromSoft gives you the option to smack at his legs for half an hour if you're desperate for a real fight, but you would probably have more fun going through the frigid outskirts in Dark Souls 2. I'm being hyperbolic, but my point still stands. It's a cool visual set piece for the first time that you see it, but with no real mechanics or lasting tension, the Wyvern ends up feeling like this giant environmental puzzle that sometimes shoots fire at you. It's fun to look at, forgettable to play, and easily the bottom of this list. Number 24, Half-Light: Spear of the Church. There's always at least one NPC fight in FromSoft games, but this one tries to be different by borrowing the old monk idea from Demon's Souls. If you're online, another player can literally become the boss. Cool on paper, sure, but I've never been a fan of PvP in these games, and I don't come to Dark Souls for random arena matches. Offline, it just turns into a regular NPC boss wearing a fancy title, and I've never really been a fan of those either. This boss kind of just drags on. You touch the fog wall, sit through Judicator Argo's slow dialogue, and only then does the fight really begin. While you wait, a Painting Guardian spawns in to throw knives at you and chip at your health. Another will spawn in later into the fight, and if you don't clear them fast, they'll turn this whole thing into a 3-on-1 headache. Half-Light himself isn't particularly hard, he's just persistently annoying. Lots of rolls, ranged pokes, and he really tries to parry you, which to me breaks the flow more than it actually challenges you. The only thing that I can't deny about this fight is the music is just amazing, and I do like the concept of another player stepping in as the spear, but the concept isn't enough to carry the actual encounter. Half-Light is just a fight that feels like a multiplayer detour instead of a proper boss. He ranks above Ancient Wyvern only because at least he stands his ground and trades blows, but that's a pretty low bar to clear. Number 23, Curse-Rotted Greatwood. If I could describe Greatwood simply, I'd say it's a chore of a boss. He isn't even required to beat the game, but like the Witches of Hemwick from Bloodborne, he does drop something that is worth your trouble, that being the Transposing Kiln, which lets you turn boss souls into unique weapons, items, or spells. Honestly, that reward is more exciting than the fight itself. The Greatwood is this giant diseased tree surrounded by basic enemies that mostly serve as distractions, and his actual moveset is as slow and clumsy as he looks. Big arm sweeps, random belly flops, and the occasional shimmy that chips damage if you're too close. The main gimmick of this boss is to run around popping the pus-filled sacks all over his body. Smack those weak spots and you'll chunk his health bar in huge pieces. But otherwise, nothing really happens when you hit him. At about the halfway mark, he slams down hard enough to shatter the floor, sending both of you into this massive underground pit. That drop is easily the coolest moment of the entire encounter and feels like it should kick things into high gear. Instead, Phase 2 kinda just swaps one annoyance for another. There are no longer added enemies, but the Greatwood sprouts this gross hand from its stomach and starts using it for quicker attacks, but the overall pace barely changes. You're still circling him looking for sacks to pop and waiting for awkward animations to end. Outside of the single dramatic floor break, the fight is too easy and kind of dull, making this one of the least memorable bosses in the game. Number 22, Deacons of the Deep. The Deacons are at least a somewhat memorable encounter and definitely stand out as a unique boss for Dark Souls 3. but the whole thing reminds me a lot of Rom the Vacuous Spider from Bloodborne. The fight is basically a big game of tag. You run around the crowd of cultists looking for one that's glowing red so you can smack it and lower the shared health bar. It isn't a terrible boss by any means, but it's just not my style, and that keeps it pretty low on this list. They are mandatory since you need the small doll they drop to keep progressing, but unlike the Great Wood, I don't dread this one or wish that I could plan my route to skip it. The Cathedral of the Deep has this cool, eerie vibe, and the Candlelit Arena fits the theme nicely. It's just that the actual fight never builds much tension. Most of the deacons just kind of shuffle around and don't hit very hard. Danger mainly comes from getting trapped in a corner or letting the chip damage add up. Phase 2 ditches the find the glowing guy gimmick and spawns the Archdeacon as the true target, turning the rest of the fight into this light DPS race. You have to focus him down before the curse meter fills while the other deacons try to body block you. It's a neat twist, and I get why some players might like it, but for me, the whole battle is more of a speed bump than an actual highlight of Dark Souls 3. Number 21, High Lord Wolnir. Wolnir is one of the few bosses that can genuinely make you jump the first time you encounter him. The lights cut out and this massive skeleton just appears in front of you, and for a second it feels like you've stepped into this horror game. Sadly, the thrill mostly ends there. This is another early game gimmick fight, something Dark Souls 3 leans on a bit too much in the first half, and the goal here is simple: smash the 3 glowing bracelets on his wrists. Sometimes that's almost laughably easy. You run in, pop each bracelet, and he collapses before he can even react. Other times, it's a nightmare. If he ever just decides to crawl upward, the fog under him starts eating your health bar like crazy, and if he gets the sword out, suddenly his left arm, the one you still need to hit by the way, turns into this huge pain to reach. On a good day, he's free souls, but on a bad day, he's an unexpected run killer. The presentation stays top tier the whole time. The black void in the arena, the eerie music, and just Wolnir's enormous frame in general make him one of the most striking sights in the game. I just wish the mechanics matched that atmosphere. When a boss swings between total pushover and pure frustration, depending on random behavior, it's hard to love the fight no matter how good it looks. I absolutely love the look and atmosphere for Wolnir, but I dislike the execution. Number 20, Champion Gravetender and his Great Wolf. I know some people will think that even this spot is too generous, and before my last playthrough, I probably would have agreed with you. On paper it sounds weak, yet another NPC fight, which usually puts a boss near the bottom for me. The first half is exactly that. You trade blows with a fairly ordinary NPC while a few wolves kind of nip at your heels. Nothing special, and honestly, really bland. But the real reason this fight isn't lower is what happens halfway through. He calls in this gigantic cracked out Great Wolf, and suddenly you go from sparring a dude your own size to dodging a school bus sized wolf that got into his owner's meth supply. The wolf zooms across the arena with punishing charge attacks and uses ice breath that can cover a good portion of the field, because why wouldn't a wolf have ice breath? It's this huge jump in intensity and easily the best part of the encounter. It definitely helps that the setting and soundtrack are just incredible. The flowers and icy spikes give the arena this quiet beauty that makes the chaos of the second phase pop even more. It's 100% my personal favorite arena in the game. If this had just been a dedicated wolf boss, it would rank much higher. Instead, we got a great second act dragged down by a slower first half, leaving the whole fight stuck near the bottom despite its flashes of enjoyability. Number 19, Old Demon King. The Old Demon King is one of those bosses that I forget about. That is, until I'm actually down in Smoldering Lake, and every time I do fight him, I end up thinking, yeah, this is better than I remember. He's a relic from the old Chaos Demons, and the look is perfect for that role. He's got molten rock armor and this burning crown of horns. If you played Dark Souls 1, you'll probably understand what I'm talking about. But the soundtrack has this sort of ominous feeling to it, giving the fight this doomed vibe that fits perfectly. Gameplay wise, he's slow, but not really boring. The fight mixes in sweeping mace combos with big fire attacks that really make you think about spacing. Not to mention I found out he has this 6-piece combo that is a pain to deal with if he uses it while the Ring of Fire is up. Speaking of, sometimes he'll summon this Ring of Fire that contracts inward and moves outward, which is kind of cool, and it really adds to the fight because it makes you focus on 2 separate things at once. He also drops meteors across the arena and flings quick flame orbs to punish punish careless heals, but my favorite detail is how his attacks get more and more frantic as his health drains. He literally starts to burn himself out and actually ends up exploding like he knows the end is coming. It's definitely not the flashiest or hardest fight in Dark Souls 3, but it's surprisingly solid. Every move is readable, and there's a lot of satisfaction in timing dodges around those fire waves. If the arena wasn't buried in one of the game's most skippable areas, I think more players would actually talk about this encounter. Old Demon King might not break into the top half of my list, but he's way more fun than people give him credit for. Number 18, Aldrich, Devourer of Gods. Aldrich had the potential to be a top tier boss. He literally replaces Ornstein and Smo by taking over their iconic Anor Londo arena, so the expectations are sky high before you even step through the fog. I also love the lore touch that he's controlling Gwendolyn from Dark Souls 1 and using him as a sort of puppet for the fight. It's such a grim and fitting idea. Sadly, the battle itself just doesn't deliver. Their most famous move is that endless rain of arrows, and while it looks cool, it's a nightmare to deal with if you aren't already sprinting. The rest of his magic is a storm of homing projectiles and soul spears that can feel unfair when they all overlap. And his melee attacks are kind of just forgettable, mostly just slow swings that never stand out. And something I hate is that he constantly runs away to the other side of the room just to set up another arrow attack. So half the fight is just spent chasing him or running away. All of the build up from the location to the lore makes you expect something legendary, but what you get is a cool arena with a mid-boss hiding inside. The atmosphere and music are top-notch, no question, but the actual fight is more frustrating than fun, making Aldrich a very mediocre encounter. Number 17, the Crystal Sage. The Crystal Sage is a pretty solid early game encounter and a nice change of pace after all the heavy melee fights before it. This is a magic-based boss, but it's not just endless spells like Renala from Elden Ring. Phase 1 is pretty straightforward: rush in, lay on some hits, and wait for the inevitable teleport. It's a simple warm-up that teaches you to stay aggressive without getting too greedy. Phase 2 is where things get trickier and a little gimmicky. The sage starts summoning doppelgangers that each fire their own magic projectiles, turning the arena into this neon bullet storm. Thankfully, the clones die in a single hit, so the plan is clear. Clear out the fake sages, then go after the real one before the cycle repeats. The easiest way to spot the real one is by color coding. Purple spells means you found the right target. Blue spells mean you're just swatting at clones. It's not the coolest fight in Dark Souls 3 for sure, but it's definitely not bad. If you're careless, the arena can fill up with spells fast, and those overlapping projectiles will melt your health bar in seconds. Overall, it's a decent early game checkpoint, fair, readable, and a nice early test of how well you can handle projectile pressure without panicking. Number 16, Osiris the Consumed King. I've heard someone say that Osiris is like fighting Vort stripped of his heavy armor, and I completely agree with that idea. Phase 1 is as straightforward as bosses get. He paces around with slow, obvious swings, and as long as you stay behind him, you can just whittle him down without much trouble. Nothing impressive, just a warm-up that feels more like a mini-boss than a major fight. Then, things definitely wake up in Phase 2. Osiris throws aside his staff, drops on all fours, and starts fighting you like a feral animal, charging, spinning, and clawing with a lot more speed and aggression. It's a fun visual shift and it adds some needed tension, but it also brings the move that I can't stand. That sudden, no-tell charge that feels like it comes out of nowhere. It's the kind of cheap hit that reminds me why I gripe so much about Ebrietas back in Bloodborne. Thankfully, he really doesn't spam it too much, so it's more of an occasional annoyance than a deal breaker like Ebrietas. Overall, he's fine. Definitely not a highlight, but not a disaster either. Him talking gives the encounter some flavor, and it makes you think he's just kinda crazy in the head, and the phase change is dramatic enough to keep you awake. Still, when I look back at the lineup for Dark Souls 3, Osiris is one of those middle-of-the-road bosses I rarely think about after the fight is over. Number 15, Iudex Gundyr. Iudex is the perfect welcome mat for Dark Souls 3. He's technically the tutorial boss, but he plays more like a real fight than the expected pushover, which is why he still sits above a lot of the later encounters. The design is simple, a giant armored dude, but the way he just stalks towards you makes him look every bit as intimidating as the game's bigger names. And there's another boss much higher on this list that builds upon everything great about Iudex. As a teaching tool, he's spot on. Gundyr punishes panic rules and teaches you to trust the invincibility frames of a well-timed dodge, instead of just running away or really trying to learn the parry timings. He forces you to watch your spacing, learn attack cues, and stay patient. Basically all the habits that make Dark Souls combat click. Then, halfway through, he throws a curveball at you. A mass of black sludge erupts from his back and mutates into this larger, more aggressive boss. The second phase is where the teaching aspect really lands. His reach jumps up, his swings get wider, and suddenly you're fighting something completely different. The best strategy is to stay close, roll through attacks, and punish from behind. Exactly how you're meant to handle a lot of the bigger bosses later on. Iudex isn't cinematic, but he's fun. It's a tightly made encounter that nails the job of introducing new players to everything Dark Souls 3 expects of them. Number 14, Fort of the Boreal Valley. Vor is what I'd call the best of the mediocre bosses. Nothing about his mechanics is groundbreaking, but every piece of the fight is perfectly tuned for where he shows up. First off, the music is absolutely legendary. One of the most iconic tracks in the entire Souls series, and a huge reason why this fight sticks in my head. His design is just as strong, a huge frost-covered beast in glowing armor. I mean, who wouldn't like that, right? The battle itself is simple but smart. Phase 1 is all about getting behind him and staying patient. He's slow enough that you can read every swing, but the constant frostbite buildup keeps you from going totally brain dead. If you do get caught, it's usually because the frost meter spiked or you got punished for greedy attacks. Phase 2 doesn't reinvent the fight, but it does add a little bit of spice. Vord starts mixing in long sliding charge attacks that look scary but are actually really easy to dodge and leave him wide open if you stay calm. It's definitely nothing special, but it doesn't need to be. For the first major roadblock after the tutorial, Vor is exactly what he should be. Straightforward, fair, and memorable enough to stand out long after you've left the High Wall of Lothric. Number 13, Yorm the Giant. Yorm is one of those massive set-piece bosses that's more about the experience than the difficulty, and I'm fine with that. Walking into his enormous throne room and seeing him stand straight up is still a crazy sight even on replays. He feels like a natural addition to fights like the Storm King from Demon's Souls or Rykard from Elden Ring. Huge, dramatic, and built around a special weapon gimmick rather than just a long health bar. The fight revolves around the Storm Ruler Greatsword, sitting right in the arena. At first his HP barely moves, but once you charge the sword's wind strike, it deletes giant chunks of his health. The fun comes from timing those charge blasts while reading Yorm's own heavy swings. Big overhead charges, sweeping horizontal smashes, or sudden stomps that all keep you on your toes. Even though the gimmick makes it easy to deal real damage, his reach and power is still really punishing if you're not paying attention and ready to dodge. And I really just have to mention the side quest with Siegward. It's absolutely amazing, and seeing him walk through the boss fog with you is just great. I love my onion boy. Like the other cinematic bosses, Yorm isn't meant to be brutally hard. He's meant to feel huge and dramatic, and he absolutely delivers. Landing each Storm Ruler hit is ridiculously satisfying, and the sheer scale of the fight makes it one of the more fun cinematic moments in the game. He's not complex, but as a giant spectacle, he does exactly what he should. Now, I do have to say that these last 12 bosses span from amazing to perfect, and all of these rankings can really fall at any spot. Shit dude, if enough people ranked Dark Souls 3 bosses, each one of them could have a shot at being someone's number 1, and I would completely understand why, which is kind of crazy to say for 12 bosses in one game. Also, get your goodbyes in for this silly ass gentleman. I mainly want you guys to really see what these bosses have to offer, so I'll keep the visual editing to a bit of a minimum, but let me know if you want to see him again in future stuff. But without further ado, I give you the reasons as to why people claim Dark Souls 3 has the best boss lineup in all of FromSoft. Number 12, the Abyss Watchers. The Watchers are where Dark Souls 3 really solidifies itself as a great game. You step into a field of fallen warriors and immediately get pulled into one of the most unique bosses in the entire series. Instead of a straightforward fight, Phase 1 drops you into a 4-way fight where there's you, the boss, an additional Abyss Watcher that also targets you, and another will eventually rise to attack everyone, including its own allies. It feels less like a typical boss and more like you've just crossed a fog wall wall into a century-old war. It is such a strong way to make this encounter feel alive. The mechanics match that sense of chaos perfectly. Their greatsword style is fast, with lunging thrusts and flowing combos that keep you reacting instead of memorizing a simple pattern. Dealing with multiple watchers forces you to watch the entire arena, picking your moments while they clash with each other. Sometimes you can lure them into fighting one another and create safe openings, other times you're dodging blades from two different angles at once. It's hectic without ever feeling too random, and it really makes the first phase just exciting. Then the fight takes this dramatic turn. After the leader falls, he resurrects now on fire because, yes. Phase 2 strips away all the distractions and just becomes a clear, high-speed one-on-one. The new fire adds range and more danger to every swing. It's the perfect escalation. Everything about this fight, from the corpse-strewn arena to the almost desperate-sounding OST, cements it as a highlight of the early game. It really just checks every box I look for in a fight. Great design, memorable music, and a moveset that's fun to learn and rewarding to master. The Abyss Watchers managed to feel huge in scope and still mechanically tight, making them a really distinctive and replayable boss in Dark Souls 3. Number 11, we have Pontiff Sulyvahn. Pontiff is one of those fights that instantly stand out the moment you walk through the fog. He's sitting in the middle of a massive cathedral with two greatswords, one glowing with fire and the other covered in magic. Quick side note, I've seen a lot of people comparing Rellana from Shadow of the Erdtree to Pontiff, but personally, I think they're only really similar in looks and some attacks. They definitely have their own details that distinguish one from the other, and just because I really want to debate, Rellana is better. Anyways, the second you step foot in the arena, you know this isn't going to be a slow fight. At this point in the game, he's really the hardest boss that you've faced, and for me, he's the definition of a mid-game wall. Sort of how Genichiro is in Sekiro. Either you tighten up your timing here, or you're not moving forward. The first phase is all about learning patience. Pontiff really likes to string together long combos and quick thrusts, and he almost always delays one swing at the very end when you think you're safe, just to punish greedy attacks. Once you figure out the rhythm, the fight turns into a clean back and forth. You roll through, sneak a hit, and reset. It's not about landing big damage, it's about proving that you can survive his pressure without panicking. The flow makes every successful punish feel earned. Then comes phase 2. Pontiff summons a clone of himself, and he'll start to mirror every attack the clone dishes out. You can eliminate the clone if you want, but keeping it alive almost feels like a practice tool. The fake always swings first, so you get a preview of what's coming before the real hit lands. It's hectic at first, but once you get used to it, the fight feels like controlled chaos. What makes Pontiff so memorable is how complete the package is. The cathedral is built for the fight. It's wide open, but claustrophobic because of the pressure he can put on. The soundtrack sells the intensity, and his design is a combination of cool and intimidating. He's not just another boss, he's the checkpoint of skill in Dark Souls 3, making him one of the top fights in the base game. Number 10, Dancer of the Boreal Valley. Starting the top 10 is a boss that feels like she belongs in Sekiro, but somehow fits perfectly into Dark Souls 3. The Dancer is one of those rare fights that nails everything: atmosphere, cutscene, design, music, mechanics, and even satisfaction. Honestly, I think she's the best visually designed boss in the game. Her moveset is a mix of quick slashes and heavy slams that feel like they'd be right at home in a faster combat system, yet they still work great here. The way her animations flow together, sometimes snapping suddenly or dragging out longer than you expect, it keeps you guessing every time. Dodging her attacks feels incredibly satisfying because her combos are long and punishing if you mess up, but when you nail every roll in sequence, it feels like you were actually dancing. Weird, right? Few bosses capture that rhythm of patience and timing as well as she does. I also love the flexibility of her placement. Normally she's a late game boss guarding the path to the Consumed King's Garden and Lothric Castle, but if you so choose, you can trigger her fight early. It's brutal, but the reward is huge. You gain access to high level areas and piles of upgrade materials, way earlier than you're supposed to. It's one of those optional risks that FromSoft does so well, and it makes the Dancer feel even more special. The only reason she isn't ranked higher is because of how stacked Dark Souls 3's roster is. The Dancer has everything that I want from a Souls boss, and she's mandatory to beat the game, but every time I go through her fight, it feels like a highlight of my playthrough. Number 10 almost feels too low, but it goes to show how strong the top half of this list really is. Number 9, the Demon Prince. Somehow not even the best double boss in Dark Souls 3, but man, they still cooked with this one. Before you even see the prince, you've got to deal with his two little dudes, the demon from below and the demon in pain. And the way this duo is mechanically handled makes this fight one of the cleanest gank encounters FromSoft has ever designed. Most double bosses just overwhelm you, too many hitboxes flying around and not enough iframes to keep up, but here the AI does something really smart. The glowing demon always takes the aggressive role, while the other hangs back and peppers you with poison projectiles that are pretty easy to dodge. It's a back and forth rhythm that is kind of tough, but never unfair. I want to use Dark Souls 2 as an example. Unlike Lud and Zolin, who are just frustrating, the Dragon Rider duo, who are laughably easy, and the Throne Watcher and Defender, who just feel really messy. This fight manages to find the perfect middle ground. It's challenging without being chaotic for the sake of chaos, and that's rare for double bosses. What makes this encounter even better is how it sets up Phase 2. The Demon Prince's moveset actually changes depending on which of the two demons you eliminate first. If you take out the demon from below first, you end up getting a rougher version of the fight, where the prince has access to fireballs and big AoE explosions. It's not unmanageable, but it's definitely less fun. Take down the demon in pain first though, and he gets the signature laser move. It's a visually amazing attack that also gives you a wide open punish window if you play it right. That kind of branching design keeps the fight very fresh across replays. Once the prince shows up, the tone shifts into something bigger. He's tanky as hell and hits like a truck, but he's fair. Most of his attacks have clear tells. He gives you plenty of stagger windows, and even though his health pool is massive, you never feel like you're just chipping away for no reason. The atmosphere of fighting in that charred pit with fire lighting up the arena is just cool. Between the great two-phase design, the clever mechanics, and the spectacle of the prince himself, the fight is one of the highlights of the Ring City DLC. Number 8, Dragon Slayer Armor. Sometimes, FromSoft doesn't need to overcomplicate things. Dragon Slayer Armor is the perfect example that one of the most basic boss concepts, a big knight in heavy armor, still works perfectly when it's executed right. There's no flashy cutscene, no huge cinematic build-up, just you squaring up against a giant dude with a massive shield and axe. And yeah, there are those dragon creatures firing projectiles in the background, but they're more of a set piece than an actual threat. This fight is all about the good back and forth. The arena sells it immediately. You're standing on this massive bridge with the city sprawling below and those dragons looming in the distance. The music is one of the game's most iconic tracks, and even though his design isn't wild or experimental, it's perfect. Just a knight that looks like he could crush you in one hit, and often does. The moveset is where Dragon Slayer Armor really shines. His swings strike a perfect balance between heavy windups and surprisingly quick follow-ups, so you can't ever zone out. He's consistently in your face, pushing you to react, and the only real breathing room that you get is circling around the fountain in the middle of the arena. His timings can be tricky at first, but once you understand it, every dodge feels satisfying. A quality that every boss moving forward on this list will have. All that to say, this fight just works so well. It's simple, aggressive, and never needs a gimmick to stay engaging. Stay close, learn the dodge timings, figure out the punish windows, and it becomes one of the cleanest tests of skill in the game. No nonsense, no tricks, just a brutally fun one-on-one that perfectly captures what makes Dark Souls combat so satisfying. Number 7, this guy. I couldn't find the name of this boss anywhere, but he's the definition of a perfect secret encounter. FromSoft loves hiding their hardest fights behind weird quests or obscure triggers, and this one is tucked so far out of the way that stumbling onto it feels like a prize all on its own. It's the kind of fight that makes you want to go out of your way in every playthrough just to do it again. On my first run, this was easily the hardest boss that I'd ever encountered. Coming back later though, after the DLC and multiple other Souls games, it feels way more manageable, but this fight still holds up. The style here reminds me a lot of Dragon Slayer, except he's taken off all of his heavy armor and is much faster. No bulky gear, no shield, just a good back and forth where every swing has to be reacted to quickly. It's aggressive without breaks, but never unfair. That constant pacing makes the fight feel alive. He's got just enough flashy moves to sell the spectacle without drowning the encounter out at its core. Now, Phase 1 isn't perfect. but it's short enough that it doesn't feel intrusive on the real fight. You're mostly focusing on positioning, reading where the dragon's going to land so you can position yourself to get a few hits in. It's really fine, but nothing special. And of course, because this is Dark Souls 3, the guy without a name just stabs his own dragon mid-cutscene to get stronger, because why not, right? It's kind of ridiculous, but it's also exactly the kind of dramatic moment that makes the transition work. Phase 2 is definitely just the real fight. The pace never slows and it pushes you into this sort of flow state where you're rolling through every chain attack and sneaking in single hits whenever you can. It punishes greed instantly, so it turns into a duel of patience. You weave your attacks into his combos, not the other way around. Those are my favorite kind of bosses. The ones that force you to react, not just mash it till the health bar runs out. It's intense, reaction heavy, and one of the more engaging fights in the entire game. An overall fantastic boss. Number 6, the Soul of Cinder. The Soul of Cinder is one of those bosses that is equal to what it represents and how it plays. He isn't just another final hurdle, he is literally made up of everyone who has linked the First Flame, from Gwen all the way through the Chosen Undead and the Bearer of the Curse. It's the ultimate culmination of the series. The fact that Dark Souls 3 ends with you fighting the embodiment of its own legacy is such a strong idea. Even for someone like me who doesn't usually obsess over lore, it's impossible to ignore how significant this fight feels. And when the recreation of Gwen's piano theme hits, it solidifies itself as a perfect closer for a 5-year trilogy. Concept aside, this fight absolutely delivers mechanically. The arena is a barren wasteland under a fading sun. It's stripped down, but fitting for the end of everything. Phase 1 is where the depth comes in. Soul of Cinder cycles through multiple fighting styles, each based on builds from earlier games. He's got the coiled sword stands with standard combos, a spear-based style that keeps you at arm's length, a pyromancy and scimitar hybrid that mixes melee and flame attacks, and a sorcery-focused style that can blast you from range. I'm probably forgetting one. The coolest part is how unpredictable this fight is. He can swap between any class mid-fight, so no two runs through this phase feel exactly the same. It works so well because it forces you to adapt. One attempt might lean heavily on magic, while another has him spamming spear thrusts, and it keeps the fight feeling fresh no matter how many times you face him. It's less about memorizing a pattern and more about responding in the moment. Then phase 2 starts, and this fight turns from clever design into pure fan service in the best way possible. He starts pulling straight from Gwen's moveset from Dark Souls 1. Fiery greatsword swings, lunges, and even the rhythm of his combos feel like a callback. The iconic piano theme plays, and it suddenly feels like you're not just fighting the end of Dark Souls 3, you're fighting a boss that is sort of an echo of the entire series. It's cool, it's challenging, and it's the most fitting way possible to close out the trilogy. There's nothing I would change about this fight. Number 5, Champion Gundyr. You all know the memes about the bell-bearing hunter from Elden Ring Night Raid? This is the equivalent for Dark Souls 3. This is a boss that is just built around being intimidating. Walking into his arena for the first time, you think, oh, it's just a tutorial boss again, no big deal. But the second he starts moving, you realize that this isn't Udex with a few new tricks. This is a completely different encounter. The aggression, the speed, the sheer hostility he brings to the fight. It's on another level. It's such a brilliant fake-out that sets the tone for one of the game's most memorable bosses. There's nothing flashy or cinematic to distract you from the fight itself. It's just you, Gundyr, and one of the best soundtracks in the game to back it up. His moveset is brutal in the best way. Fast, unpredictable strings that feel like they're never gonna end. He can chain together quick swings, heavy overhead smashes, and lunges in ways that make it look like he's never going to stop attacking. At first, it feels impossible to find a gap, but once you start spotting those tiny openings, the fight transforms into this amazing back and forth. What makes him so terrifying is just how relentless he is. He doesn't let you run, because the second you try to create distance, he's charging right back after you. He doesn't let you heal, because if you drink at the wrong time, he's already mid-combo about to juggle your ass into the ground. The only real option you have is to use your punish windows smartly, not just for damage, but for survival. That's part of the reason this fight feels so fast-paced and so intense, because it forces you to play clean from start to finish. The best part is how it builds on Udex's encounter without feeling like a repeat. Everything is sharper, faster, more dangerous, but it's never unfair. He looks intimidating, fights like he personally hates you, and keeps the pressure on until you're either dead or in total control. Champion Gundyr is pure mechanical design at its peak. No gimmick, no tricks, just a straight up fight that is intensity in the form of a boss. Before we get into the final four, I just have to say that these last four bosses are all perfect, and they can really be interchangeable depending on the day. But at this moment, this is the order I'm choosing. Just keep in mind, there's an argument to be made about each one of them being the single best encounter offered by Dark Souls 3. And to be honest, the same can be said about a lot of the bosses I've already talked about. Number 4, Dark Eater Midir. If I had to describe Midir in one word, it would honestly just be wow. From the first moment you see him lurking in the Ring City, all the way to the final swing that brings him down. Everything about this fight feels like peak FromSoft design. He's by far the most complex dragon fight that they have made up to this point, and even now you can see how later bosses like Bale and Plagiarisax and Elden Ring are built off the groundwork that Midir laid. He's cinematic without relying on cutscenes or gimmicks. It's just the fight itself that makes him unforgettable. Midir is one of the most memorable bosses in the entire game, and a lot of that comes down to how you're forced to fight him. The real battle is at his head. Every combo, every sweep, every fire breath ends with a small opening to punish that noggin. Sure, you can hack at his legs, but with that massive health pool, it's barely worth it. It's a fight that teaches you patience and positioning more than brute strength, and when you land those clean headshots, it feels ridiculously satisfying. Phase 1 is always great. Dodging his huge lunges, weaving through the fire breath, and keeping your ground right in front of him, but Phase 2 takes things to another level. He adds more aggression and a couple new attacks, the most iconic of course being his laser move. He condenses his fire breath into this beam and just whips it around the arena like a cornered animal. It's easily the coolest looking attack in the game, as well as one of the most dangerous. It's wild, unpredictable, and terrifying the first time you see it, but surviving it and getting back into his face gives this fight an unparalleled feeling. What makes Midir so special is that he works perfectly within Dark Souls 3's combat, despite being absolutely massive. He's fair, readable, and built around mechanics that reward skill instead of cheap tricks. It's an incredible challenge tucked away in the Ring City DLC, and one of those bosses you'll never forget after you beat him. Midir is pure spectacle and pure gameplay rolled into one, and it easily puts him at the top tier of Dark Souls 3 bosses. Number 3, the Twin Princes. This fight is the pinnacle of the base game for me. At one point, I even had them sitting at number 2 on this list, but after thinking it through, I think this is the best spot. It doesn't need to be some cinematic DLC spectacle to earn its place. Lorien and Lothric stand out because of how purely fun they are to fight. There's a natural flow to this encounter that makes it unlike anything else in Dark Souls 3. Phase 1 is all about Lorien, and he absolutely carries the spotlight. His teleporting mechanic keeps you locked in the entire time. He can disappear at the end of every combo only to reappear mid-swing right in your face. The constant pressure means that you can't zone out, you can't run away, and you have to play reactionary every second. The fight is fast-paced but not sloppy, with Lorien mixing in quick combos, slower delayed slams, fiery AoEs, and a massive charge beam that stretches across the entire arena. My only real complaint about this phase is that it goes by too quickly. I always want more time against him because it feels so good to dodge and punish his teleports. Then comes Phase 2, and this is where the fight becomes truly unique. Once Lorien goes down, his brother Lothric climbs onto his back and starts bombarding you with magic while Lorien continues teleporting and swinging. Now you've got 2 health bars to worry about and 2 completely different threats layered on top of one another. The pacing ramps up, and you have to keep things under control by focusing on Lorien until he falls, which leaves Lothric wide open as he tries to revive him. Or you have the option to stay aggressive and weave in hits onto Lothric directly while dodging around his brother. It's a fantastic design choice that gives the fight a rhythm unlike anything else in the game. This encounter is everything that I want out of a boss. It's fair but difficult to learn, flashy without being overwhelming, and full of variety. I look forward to fighting the Twin Princes every time I play Dark Souls 3, and on my first playthrough, they completely solidified my love for the game. Number 2, Sister Frieda. Sister Frieda is easily one of the most unique bosses FromSoft has ever created, and I'd call her a fight a true war of attrition. There's just so much to unpack here, because it's not only mechanically rich, but it's also dripping with atmosphere and presentation. The arena itself changes as the fight escalates, which already makes it feel special in its own way. Add the great OST, gorgeous cutscenes, Frieda's striking scythe-wielding design, plus Miyazaki's added obsession with feet, and it's clear this is going to be something big the second it starts. Phase 1 really kinda eases you in. Frieda uses fast slashes, darting in and out with quick combos. The standout mechanic here is her invisibility. At first, it seems cheap, but it's actually an opportunity. You can track her by the snow being kicked up or just from the sound of her landing, and when she reappears, she'll be charging a move that leaves her wide open for a backstab or some free damage. It's more of a warm-up than a real test, and before long, Phase 1 is already down, but that's when the real fight begins. Phase 2 turns this into a duo battle, with Frida now dual-wielding scythes and Father Ariandel swinging his giant bowl around like a wrecking ball. Normally, hearing 1v2 in a Souls game makes your heart sink, but this one works great. Ariandel takes on the aggressive role, charging you with wide crushing sweeps while Frida hangs back, controlling space with her ice attacks. The balance is surprisingly fair. You can focus on Ariandel since he's slower and easier to punish, while keeping Frida at a distance. But you always have to keep an eye on her, because she can start to heal Ariandel if you're not paying attention. It's intense, but it's not overwhelming, though the looming thought of restarting from Phase 1 if you die adds this huge layer of pressure. And just when you think the fight is over, FromSoft pulls the rug out from under you. The game gives you a Titanite slap, the music fades, and it feels like victory, until she rises again as Black Flame Frida, with a completely restored health bar, mind you. This phase is a brutal finale. She's faster, more aggressive, and her Black Flame moves add explosions and devastating projectiles into the mix. She's got frost attacks, a really cool grab that completely chunks your health bar, and constant pressure. But she also has a clear weakness. Her slam attack leaves her wide open to backstabs if you're quick, and those punishes are vital. Phase 3 just embodies the attrition aspect of this fight. You're exhausted, you're low on heals, your focus is tested, and dying here means you have to restart the entire gauntlet. It's long, it's demanding, but it's unforgettable. Every phase feels distinct, every attack feels dangerous, and the entire fight pushes you. As a capstone for the first DLC, Frida is basically perfect. An encounter that some would argue is not just the best in the Ashes of Ariandel, but the best in the entire Dark Souls trilogy. An amazing boss that I can't believe I'm putting at number 2. At number 1, Slave Knight Gale. Yeah, I feel like everyone kind of saw this coming. Gale is the perfect finale not just to Dark Souls 3, but the entire trilogy. He's the final boss of the final DLC, and everything about him feels like it was crafted to be the closing chapter for the series. The ruined desert, the eerie sky, the endless dunes, it's an arena that just screams finality. You're literally fighting at the end of the world with some random dude, and the presentation makes it unforgettable. Phase 1 is Gale at his most feral. He doesn't look like the grand knight that you would expect. He's hunched over and almost pathetic, and yet his moveset is anything but that. He rushes you down with frantic sword swings, lunging leaps, and wild flurries. The fight has this scrappy, desperate energy to it, almost like you're battling the starving beast. It sets the tone perfectly. This isn't a clean duel, it's a fight for survival against someone who has nothing left to lose. After a cutscene, Gale seems to pull himself together, and that wild beast from Phase 1 is just gone. This is where the fight really begins, and it quickly becomes the most intense battle in the entire game. Every swing of his sword is followed up by his cape, so you're forced to perfectly dodge every single attack. His moveset feels endless, combos that never seem to stop, an automatic crossbow that chips away your health, and miracles that give him space to reset. The fight moves at such a blistering pace that it feels like something out of Bloodborne or Sekiro, yet it works perfectly with Dark Souls 3. Phase 3 kicks it up even more, which I originally didn't think was possible. Lightning will now cover parts of the arena, forcing you to pay attention to your surroundings, which is kind of hard when this old-ass dude is doing Olympic medal level acrobatics while pummeling you with attacks. The balance is there, it just demands absolute focus. At this point, it doesn't feel like you're just fighting another boss. It feels like the true final test of everything that the game has taught you. I honestly can't put into words how perfect everything about this fight just comes together. It's long, exhausting, and brutal, but never boring. For me, it's the second best boss fight I've ever played in any game, only behind Mesmer from Elden Ring's DLC. Gale embodies everything I love about FromSoft's boss design: challenge, spectacle, and flow. He's probably the hardest fight in Dark Souls 3, but that's exactly why I love it. Slave Knight Gale delivers on every front, and I knew he was going to be my number 1 before I even started making this list. An absolutely perfect boss to round out this breathtakingly good series. If you made it this far into the video, a huge thanks to you for watching, and I would love any constructive criticism you may have. I love making these videos, but holy shit do they take a while to finish. With that said, I'm going to be pushing smaller projects for you guys in between these huge boss rankings. Some things I plan on doing are an Elden Ring randomizer, Elden Ring level 1, maybe on stream, Demon Souls boss ranking, Lies of P Overture stream. I haven't got around to playing that yet, and I really want to. And maybe even a Hollow Knight Silksong series on YouTube, because I do want to play through that. Anyways, thank you everybody for listening. I appreciate your time, and I hope I didn't clown on your favorite boss too much. With that, I will see you guys in the next one.